right, and welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorder stuff. And thank you all so much for joining me for today's episode. If you are new to the podcast, this is a question and answer focused podcast where you, the listener, get to send me, the therapist, podcaster person, questions about OCD and anxiety stuff, and I will read it, consider it, and likely put it up on an episode, which is what I'm doing today. If you have a question that you want me to go over to fearcastpodcast.com, send or click on the submit a question link. You can write your question, email that off to me, and I will get that as Peyton did today. But you can also skip the line, and you can send me an audio question. You can do that through Fearcast Podcast by clicking on the button at the top of the page. It's the speak pipe button. You can record your voice there. You can also go over to Instagram on Fearcast Podcast over there, and you can send me a DM, and you can record your question in the DM, and I will get it and listen to it. And again, you skip the line because you're putting your voice out there. It's a little bit of a risk, I suppose, but it makes the podcast more interesting, so I'm going to go ahead and reward that. But if you have a question, send it in. So Peyton sent me a question today, and it's kind of Casadastraphobia related. So if you have a question about what in the heck Casadastraphobia is, I would encourage you to go check out the Phobia Friday series I did, a couple of years ago. I've been meaning to do another Phobia Friday series, and these were just like shorter, like 10 to 15 minute episodes about some real specific phobias, and Casadastraphobia was one of them that I did. And it's probably the most popular one of that small series that I did. And it's about the fear of, it's hotly contested in the Casadastraphobia world, but it can be the fear of wide open spaces. For some people, it's the fear of like being around or aware of really tall buildings that can kind of trigger some discomfort. Or it can be the fear of gravity shutting off and kind of floating up into the nothingness. So it's a little bit of a mixture of all of that. So this question has to do with that, and Peyton sent a question in, and I thought, man, this would be a really fun question to get into. It's a little long, but I'll read it, and I think some of the, hopefully some of it will be helpful. But before I get into the question, I want to mention that, sorry for missing last week, but I think I mentioned in the previous episode, man, this month is just bonkers with things that I have to do and things that I got to get to and things that I get to do. At the beginning of the month, I skipped an episode because I went to the OCD conference, and that was a wild ride. And then after that, I went on a anniversary cruise with the missus. We're celebrating 15 years, which is amazing that anyone would stick with me for that amount of time. But again, she has very low standards, and that's very helpful to me. But the conference is always on the same weekend as my anniversary, so naturally, I got to do something. So we went on a cruise, which was kind of fun. I know I went on a cruise a couple months ago. We are not like just constantly going on cruises. It's like this past year. Prior to that, it's been 15 years ago for my honeymoon. So we kind of reenacted a little bit of that. We went on another cruise. We went ziplining, which is one of the things that we did on our honeymoon, which was kind of the highlight of it on that cruise. And I discovered kind of two things about myself. One, longtime listeners will know that I do have a little bit of a fear of heights. And what was great about this trip is that I discovered that, you know what, the work that I've been putting in to try to fight that or to try to work on that has been helping. I remember being on the honeymoon and like on some zip lines. If you're not familiar with zip lines, just Google zip line. You'll see. But I mean, it's really high up, and there were or I remember on the honeymoon that, there were some times that I was really nervous, especially the first couple. I was really scared, and you kind of get up on those platforms and you're looking down and you're like, I'm going to fall to my death. And like, yeah, I'm clipped in and I got the helmet, but I'm like, really, what is this thing actually doing? Probably nothing. And of course it's going to snap. And of course this giant hunk of metal is going to break with my weight. It is not. But all these fears that, go through your mind. And, it's not even the story sometimes. It's just that overwhelming feeling that you get with phobias that it just sucks. Everything about it just sucks, right? I mean, you've heard me talk about, OCD is, and I think phobias to a certain degree are, it's a feeling problem. It's not really a thought problem. Like, you rationally know, like, thousands of people go on these zip lines, every year. It's bad business to make a zip line that is going to break. It's bad business that like people just keep falling because they have bad equipment, so they're not going to check it. It's like rationally, all that stuff. But it's about clipping in and getting in and going and taking the risk to do it. That's the hard part, right? So I remember being really uncomfortable and scared, but getting through it, and it was still a lot of fun. But this one that we went to was higher, longer, and faster, and more of them than the one on the honeymoon. And I didn't have any fear. I didn't have any bit of anxiety. I didn't get any zips of anxiety. No part of my body felt wobbly and weird. It was great. And I got to actually enjoy it. And I instead of just like holding on like to get to the end, like I was able to go and kind of be able to look around and look down as I'm going through. And on the platform, I intentionally lean over the edges just to try to see if I can get myself to be uncomfortable. And I couldn't. And that's exciting to me. And I think that's really a testament to the work that I've been putting in just throughout these years of intentionally trying to make myself uncomfortable, intentionally doing the thing that's hard. And I hope that that's the message that I'm conveying to everybody out there. Whatever they're afraid of, take that risk, lean into it a little bit, try to bring up that feeling, make yourself uncomfortable. It pays off in the end, right? So that was really cool. Here's what I also discovered. I kind of have a fear of the ocean. And I know that's kind of weird that I then go on cruises and like to go on them. And there are cruise people and not cruise people. And I get it. There's a lot to not like about it. But you know what? Constantly being around food is great. Constantly having some sort of activity is kind of fun, or you can just do nothing. I've also decided cruises are just camp. It's camp for adults at sea with alcohol. That's really what it is. And all the camp counselors on this one were very nice. They were very fun. One of them was a professional bagpipe player, which I thought was super great. They did Guess That Tune Bagpipe Edition. Now, I know some of you hate this, and you know what? There's a lot to hate about that too. I thought it was super fun. But he asked all these questions, played all these songs, had full kilt. The whole thing was awesome. Anyways, but as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I feel uncomfortable with the idea of being out in the ocean, like the open ocean, and not being able to touch the ground. And I feel that way even when I'm just swimming in the ocean, like, body surfing or whatever I might be doing. The second I can't like dip down or like touch the bottom of the ocean, or touch the bottom of the ocean, the sand. My body just goes, you know what? There's a monster underneath me. Because the ocean is where God keeps his monsters. Everybody knows that. But it's this like completely irrational fear that if I can't touch the bottom, somehow there's a shark or a whale or like the Kraken shows up. And that was the joke that my wife loved to point out this trip, where I was like, yeah, man, if I can't touch the ocean, somehow I know the Kraken is underneath me and it's just going to grab me and eat me. I know that's not there, probably, but it still is this like discomfort. So obviously I'm going to have to try to challenge that, which is weird because I've done that before. I have swam in open ocean and have been fine. The Kraken did not get me, and it did not have that fear, and yet it has shown up. So something I got to work on in the future. But I think that also ties into this question that I'm going to get into with Peyton. So why don't I just start jumping into that, and then I'll get into the answer. So again, it's a little bit long, but I'll try to be a little bit quick about it. So Peyton says, I have a distinct childhood memory related to Casadastraphobia that I've forgotten about for a while. I never knew that there was a name or phobia for this feeling until just a couple hours ago. I can remember myself around 7 years old, lying down in my backyard one night, staring up at the stars, I remember the anxiety that I felt when I did this. I felt my heart start to race. I began to feel dizzy and nauseous, and I would lose my sense of spatial awareness. I even recalled telling my brother to come try staring at the stars with me because it was such a strange and foreign feeling to me at that time that I wanted to know if he would have the same experience as me. I'm pretty sure he told me something along the lines of, I don't feel anything. I have no idea what you're talking about. Personally, I wouldn't describe the feeling as fearing gravity would switch off all of a sudden, and I would fall into the sky because I would never, or was never a thought in my mind. I wouldn't describe. Oh, you wouldn't describe the feeling. Okay, so how would you? Let's see. Or they wouldn't. All right, here we go. Another trigger that I've read is related to this phobia is with skyscrapers. Reading that this also has been a trigger reminded me of a time less than a year ago when my girlfriend and I took a trip down to San Antonio. We passed through Dallas and Austin. When it was her turn to drive, she asked me to take some pictures of the skyline for her. And while I was taking them, I mentioned that I felt super nauseous and uneasy looking at the buildings towering over the moving car, especially the mirrored ones. I tried best to explain what I was feeling, but it was difficult because I didn't really understand what I felt myself. They say parenthetically, considering I didn't even know it was a real phobia at the time. They go on to say, I'm realizing every time I've had these intense feelings of anxiety, which I now link to Casadastraphobia, I've pushed the memories deep into the recesses of my mind because I sort of gaslit myself into believing I was crazy and making it all up. I'm not extremely concerned with my phobia, since I can say my phobia isn't really debilitating for me, and I'm very grateful and thank God for that. I consider myself an outdoors person, and I've been attending/working at an outdoor summer camp for 8 years, where we have campfires and tell stories about constellations above us and go on night hikes and even go ziplining at night. There's a lot of tie-ins with me and Peyton. Regardless, I still absolutely sympathize with those who have it worse than I do. And they say, based on my experiences, my questions to you are: 1, how common of an occurrence is it where people don't give their phobia any attention because they think it's just crazy, or it's just a crazy thing they're experiencing, and never realized it was a real fear that people have with its own name? And 2, does becoming aware of the phobia ever make it worse? Similarly to the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon or the frequency illusion. Will cognizance of the fear in this case make symptoms worse or occur more frequently? All right. Peyton, I love these questions. I love that you got to the point. I suppose got to the point. The questions were very clear. I love that. All right. So let me just kind of get into some of this, right? So let's go with that first question, right? How common of an occurrence is it where people don't give their phobia any attention because they think it's just a crazy thing that they experience and never realized that it was a real fear that people have its own name? So I think a lot of times that people have their own experience with something. They feel that little jittery jolt of something, and it would be kind of symptoms of a phobia, and they have these thoughts and the worries, but they don't really do anything about it. I think they do that for a lot of reasons, and I want to talk a little bit about that. But I want to say a lot also because certainly I want to say also my own experience of Casadastraphobia awareness is part of that, right? This was, I described on the episode that I remember being very distinctly like in elementary school, like being in line for something in my elementary school and noticing and like plotting and planning like the ceilings above. Now, California schools are often kind of outdoorsy in the sense that they're not, an enclosed building, that there's a lot of open spaces. A lot of the hallways are just kind of open air sort of things because we have good weather, I suppose. We have good weather. I'll say that. But, on some areas, there were like overhangs and coverings. And I had this distinct memory of like, okay, if gravity shut off or gravity reversed itself and I, boom, shut up, I want to be under a spot that would make sure that I would land in a spot where I could walk or be safe and not fall off into the nothingness. But then part of my brain would like strategize, okay, if I was here, how could I get to there? And it was this like weird experience, and I never really shared it with anybody because in the back of my mind, I also knew, this is a little crazy, and that's never going to happen. But I mean, just in case it did happen, like let's have a plan, right? So my own awareness of that I think it speaks to the reality that other people experience that too. I'm not certainly the only person who's had that experience of noticing something kind of weird or kind of funky and having, and then hearing about it later from other people, right? I think also in my process of looking into the phobias, I also discovered that, I also get a discomfort with sunken objects. So it's submechanophobia, another episode you can check out if you so want to. But it's this kind of like squicky, yucky, uncomfortable feeling I get when I see like boats sink or a boat that is sunk, or like the propellers on boats underwater. Like I just kind of get this weird, ominous, eerie, I don't like it feeling. And as I previously shared, kind of my fear of deep water, right? And I looked it up. It's called thalassophobia. Thalassophobia. I don't remember if I did an episode on this. I did a lot of episodes. It's been a long time. But anyways, it's like these are all fears. These are all have names. Now, for me, they are not debilitating. And I think that's one of the big markers of whether or not it becomes a, quote, phobia, is if it's debilitating or causing a problem in your life. For, Casadastraphobia, submechanophobia, like I get like a squicky, yucky feeling, but it's not stopping me from doing things. My fear of heights has stopped me from doing things that I perhaps want to do. So, but it certainly isn't debilitating. It's not really stopping me from living a functional life or a life that I really want to live. But I've known friends, one friend in particular who shared, as I was talking about the work that I do, they kind of confided in me that they've, for like decades, had a fear of throwing up. And I shared with them that there's a name for that. It's called emetophobia. And they were able to look that up, and it opened their eyes. They got this huge sense of relief that they weren't crazy, that they weren't weird or broken or defective in some sort of way. So it was a huge relief for them. But it was also an encouragement that now there was a name for this as a thing. And most importantly, that there is a strategy and a treatment for it. Now, I don't know, it's been many years since I've talked to this person, so I don't know if they've taken steps towards that. But hearing that information could be a tremendous relief. Similar to this as well, when I was hiking, I did a backpacking trip with my family. We went to, what's the name of it? Oh, no, goodness. I don't know. It's the highest mountain, Mount Whitney. There you go. My brain was going, it's Mount Baldy. And I'm like, no, brain, it's not Mount Baldy. It's a bigger one than Mount Baldy. It's Mount Whitney. It's the biggest one in the lower 48. Anyways, a lot of my family share that they have this like fear, this impulse, this thought that when they get close to an edge, they have this like thought of them jumping from that high place. I don't have that, but a lot of people do. But they never really shared that until they were in this place when they felt trusting, or they were around trusting people to share it with. And then a bunch of other people shared it too. So why don't people bring it up? I think one, there's a sense of embarrassment. There's a sense of like a fear of judgment from other people, right? Gosh, what if I share this and people just think I'm a big weirdo? Or what if they think that I'm crazy? Or what if they think that, I'm, I don't know, like I'm unsafe or I'm unhinged or whatever it might be. I think also a lot of people just brush it off as unreasonable. They go like, this is nothing, or this is weird, or, I'll keep an eye on that, but I recognize it's also crazy, right? Now, again, these things start to snowball, and the more you start to give into it, the more you start to heat it, the more it starts to skyrocket, the more like attention you give it. But a lot of times, these fears, the vast majority of the things that like we're talking about here aren't really, quote, problems until it starts to show up in your day-to-day, right? We usually encounter large buildings on a day-to-day basis, or, if we live in a more rural area, we might encounter wide open spaces more often, right? But it's rare that I'm going to see, sunken objects. It's rare that I'm going to be out in the middle of the ocean, right? It's rare that I'm going to be in a really high building or really high place. I generally live and work and operate on the ground, right? Most of us do. So it doesn't really get in the way of my life. But boy, if those were things that were part of my life on a regular basis, then yes, it might impact my life. Now, but I think what this also talks about, or I think what this also illustrates, is the importance of sharing fears with trusted people talking to people about what we're afraid of, what we notice, what we experience, what we think, what we feel, and not because we're trying to, get that reassurance, but there's a kind of natural validation that comes through sharing this with other people, right? When we share things, other people usually share their things with us, or not everybody is going to share it the right way or have the right response or the best, safest response. They might go, oh, well, you're afraid of this. Well, I'm afraid of this, and that makes yours less than, or something like that. And there are going to be some jerks out there who are going to make us feel less than for the fears that we have. But we want to be thinking about, like, who are these safe people that we can talk to about these things and kind of share our, feelings and thoughts with. And there's, I know there's a fear of intimacy. There's a vulnerability about sharing these things. But think about those safe people think about those safe people that you can talk to about this, because I think a lot of times when we do, they will give us a little bit of reassurance and validation that, yeah, like, we're all afraid of stuff. And they may encourage you, they may support you, and they may try to find out how they can help. And these are all great ways that we can start to think about ways that we can grow and challenge ourselves and do other things, right? I didn't have any opportunities on this recent cruise to challenge my heights. They didn't really have a whole lot of stuff other than, leaning over the edge. There was some drop-offs that would go down, 7 or 8 stories. And, I got close to the window, but, I do that a lot now. And it didn't really freak me out that much. So it's important, though, to be sharing these things. Now, that brings us to that next question of yours, Peyton. Peyton said, the next question is, does becoming aware of the phobia make it worse, similar to the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon? Will a cognizance of this fear make symptoms worse or occur more frequently? So first, I wasn't aware of the name of this, so I had to look it up. So Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. So it's kind of this fear. Well, let me just pull up this the page for it. I'll just read briefly. Let's see here. It's a cognitive bias in which a person notices a specific concept, word, or product more frequently after recently becoming aware of it, right? And they kind of, so there are a couple of different phenomenons or a couple of different aspects about why they explain this happens. So it's, let's see here. So it's selective attention, confirmation bias, and recently illusion, or the recently illusion. So we'll talk a little bit about those. But after reading it, man, I have totally fallen victim to this as well. I had this experience a couple of years ago where, I've grown up in Southern California, and there are lizards all over the place. We used to catch lizards for fun. We'd make little snares out of them, not to like wrench them, but to, catch them. And I had one for a pet for a while, and, it was a whole thing. But it was only in the past 5 years that I noticed that I found baby lizards. Now, like the little guys, like an inch long, right? Definitely baby lizards, not just smaller lizards, which I suppose baby lizards are just small lizards. But point is, noticeably baby lizards. And I never saw them in my life until 5 years ago. Now, my brain went, what, do they just start making baby lizards now? I know they had to come from somewhere, but now I see them and I notice them and I find them around my yard and on the wall and all this stuff. And I'll be honest, we're in the tree of trust. I can be honest with y'all. This is one of the only things in my life where I've said, maybe we do live in the Matrix. And the Matrix is just like the operators of the Matrix had to start creating baby lizards now. They're like, Kevin hasn't noticed baby lizards. Hey, can we get a team on that to start working on this? And they did, and now I start to notice them more often. It's the only thing, and now I kind of make a joke about it in my head. The other is the word colorway. I feel like this is a new word, but again, I'm falling victim to this. I'm certain. I haven't looked it up when the start of this word, the genesis of it was. But the word colorway just all of a sudden started showing up, and I noticed it particularly around guitar pedals. They say this has a blue colorway, this one has a pink colorway, and I'm like, we used to call those just colors. This one was the color blue, or this one had this one. What color is it? It's blue. It's pink. Whatever it is. But we didn't say way after there's colorway. What's the color, right? Now, I'm falling victim to it as well. So now maybe it is a brand new word. I don't know, and I'm certainly not going to look it up. But so let's go over what these things are. So selective attention. So it's the process of focusing and selecting on certain objects while ignoring others, right? So again, like it's perhaps I'm, when we start doing this, we're going to start to notice situations, objects, items, interactions, words, in showing up more and more and more. But again, it's because our brain is selecting for this. It's starting to focus on this more than others, and it ignores some of the other words or items or objects that we would typically see, and it's just kind of bringing it to our attention. We maybe start to notice this. Like I find this, like if you're interested in a car, like I've noticed this of like, oh, I want to, like I like this now, this car for whatever reason, and I'm like, I'm seeing him everywhere. It's because my brain is primed for that. And it probably saw them all the time anyways, but now it's selecting for it more than others, right? So the other part, confirmation bias. This is the bias that refers to the tendency of seeking evidence that confirms one's beliefs or hypotheses, while sometimes overlooking evidence to the contrary. We see this constantly in life, right? So this is that situation where we glom onto the things that confirm what we already believe, and we casually ignore the stuff that we don't believe in, right? I feel like this is like finding information online that confirms your fears and ignoring the evidence that like speaks against it. Right? This happens all the time too, right? Especially this happens really with OCD and anxiety stuff. We're going to find news articles or blog posts or Reddit posts, or our brain is going to casual or select specific situations from our past and really highlight those as our beliefs and ignore and suppress all the stories, information, experiences that go counter to it. That's really that's one of the things we're doing in therapy is we're trying to illustrate the other side of things to show that it's not just bad events, it's all these other ones, right? It's other things happen. This happens in the news all the time, right? We hear an article, we hear news, we read an article, we see a post or whatever that says like, oh, the politician that I don't like does these bad things, and see how terrible they are. And we casually ignore the bad things that the person that we like does. Or, the person that we like does great things. And we go, oh my gosh, see about how much great things they do. And the politician or the person or people we don't like do good things. And we go, oh, well, that doesn't count, right? That can fall into a confirmation bias sort of category. Lastly, recency or recently illusion. It's kind of noticing something occurring recently and then believing that it has that it originated recently too, right? And I think that's like my baby lizards example, right? I just started noticing them, so clearly they must be new, right? I think this also this happens like with like I've heard it like this generation is the worst, or we have it worst, or something like that. And it ignores history, that other generations and other times and other peoples have had it pretty bad or had it pretty good or had it something. But there are trends and patterns and occurrences that are repeated patterns, but because we are experiencing it, we believe that it's new and we casually forget the other ones. Now, I also think this happens a lot with internet algorithms. I think internet algorithms is making it worse. Have you ever had the occurrence of Googling something or sometimes just saying something and the robots around us listening to it, and then all of a sudden the ads that we get are all of that, right? And we go, man, people, like a lot of people must be into this now. And I'll get that if I Google something with a client. I Googled, not with a client, I Googled like straw hats. I was looking for a straw hat for being out in the sun. I wanted to get a hat for it. So I Googled that, and then guess what all my ads are? They're hat ads. Or, and it's, if I search on like Facebook Marketplace, if I search for straw hats, now, and I click on a couple to see what they look like, now all of a sudden it goes, Kevin's really into straw hats all of a sudden, so we're just going to pump those over to him, right? So this does happen in real life, but it also happens in our mind that can contribute to this, right? So, so to your question about like, does being aware of the phobia make it worse? Now that I defined what that term was, I'm going to go ahead and say yes. I think it can make it worse or not, but I think only for a minute. Now, I've shared this example before. When I used to run an OCD group myself, it was a mixed group. So it was a bunch of different subtypes, not just one. And people would be afraid, like, hey, if I join the group and, am I going to take on other people's fears? Now, my answer to that was maybe, but usually for like a week. And then it sometimes drops off a cliff because it's usually not what you're afraid of. Now, what that meant is like sometimes our brain is going to go into a situation and hear something that someone is afraid of, and it's going to take that on and go, oh, that's something that I can be afraid of. Well, maybe I ought to be afraid of that. And then someone is, and they worry about it, but then it kind of loses its luster, its excitement, its spark after a little bit of time, right? But becoming aware of something, well, now that we're aware of that thing, so we're looking out for it more. As an OCD therapist, I hear stories all the time of what people are afraid of, and now I become aware of them in my regular life. I see it. I see situations where someone could be afraid of. I see an item that someone mentioned that's this obscure item or this obscure fact or whatever it is, and I'm aware of it now. And now my brain brings it to my attention or tells me this story along with seeing this item, right? So I'm primed to thinking about it, primed to noticing it. And then I have this story attached to it that that tells me about how someone else was afraid of it because of X, Y, or Z potential danger, right? So it can certainly make it worse for a short period of time. I've also had that occur for people listening to the Fearcast. I've had emails from people saying, hey, Kevin, you did an episode on this, and I wasn't afraid of this before, and now I am, and you're the worst. I can't do it. And so anyways, yes, we can become aware of it, right? And so learning about it certainly can make it become part of your awareness. But I'll say this, and I think this is the most important thing. Recognizing our natural tendency towards fight or flight and the impulse the impulse to go and heed that and listen to that will be one of the most important things that you can do to stop this process from happening. Being aware of that pull and then intentionally ignoring it, intentionally resisting it is one of the best things that you can do to fight against that OCD or anxiety disorder or phobia impulse to reject uncertainty and to seek safety and certainty. Right? So what that kind of looks like is now that you become aware of this phobia, Peyton, now that you're aware of Casadastraphobia and that feeling, that nervousness, right, that worry that shows up, right, that uneasiness, now that you're aware of it, use your awareness and attach acceptance to it as well. Right? So acknowledge it. So some of the things you can do, acknowledge that impulse or fear, right? Acknowledge that there is that pull. And do non-engagement responses. We've talked about non-engagement responses before. And that could be something like just noticing the thought is there and then choosing to not engage with it or not to heed that fight or flight response to it, right? Heed that maybe compulsive urge to get safety, get reassurance, get encouragement, and instead we're like, oh yeah, there's that story again. Yeah, there's that Casadastraphobia. Oh yeah, there's my heights. Or oh yeah, there's that fear of underwater things. Or oh yeah, there's my fear of knives. Or there's a fear of this. Right? We can go, oh, that's really cool thought. Or oh, that's a weird thought. And we can also say like, oh, that makes me uncomfortable. Right? Or like, oh yeah, really high buildings. Those are weird. Or, oh man, the stars. Man, wouldn't it be weird if gravity stopped and I flew into the sky? Yeah, that would be kind of weird. And then we practice redirecting back to whatever we were doing initially. Going on hikes, telling stories about the constellations. All that sounds great. That's where the focus ought to be. And when your brain starts to pull you in, we go, yeah, I know it's there, and we'll see what happens. Maybe that'll happen. And then we casually redirect back to the thing at hand, right? We're not going to practice getting into the habit of reassurance or practice getting into the habit of explaining it away or justifying or nullifying, right? We're going, yeah, I know what that story is, and I'm going to come back over here. And we go ahead, then we do whatever action is that we wanted to do in the first place, right? So, like my fear of heights, I know it's there. I know I used to be afraid of it. I'm going to notice it's there, but I'm going to do the thing that's hard, right? If I have an opportunity next time to be out in open water, I will take it and I will report back on what happens. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to go on another cruise. I need to go into ocean camp again. Darn. Well, I'll report back. But for you, Peyton, I would encourage you to find an open space, to look up at the stars, to look at big high buildings, to go on a trip to, the downtown area of whatever city that you're in, and to do the things that are hard, and to notice, there's that thought, but pushing into it, not stepping away from it. For those of you listening to this episode who don't have Casadastraphobia or any of the other fears I mentioned, this is not a call to now be afraid of these things, but instead, I bet you'll be aware of it more. I bet you'll notice when you're out near the ocean or big buildings or out in open spaces, oh, this is what they were talking about on this episode. And instead of going, oh, maybe this is something I ought to be afraid of, instead, look at the stars. Instead, get close to that building and look all the way up and look at how tall it is. There's a tree in my neighborhood that's super freaking tall. It's alarmingly, noticeably, remarkably tall. Look up at that tree. Do something, step into that. Even if it's a fear that you don't really have, it's a way that you can connect with other people around you that share fear, but maybe not yours. It's where you can say, man, this is something that other people are afraid of, in solidarity with them. I'm going to blank, whatever that thing is, right? So, Peyton, I hope this answers your questions, and I hope everybody out there has a greater understanding of different fears that people have, and hopefully the exercises that I talked about will give them other ideas about what they can do to help with their own fears. So, everybody, thank you so much for being a part of this and listening and sending in your questions. If you have questions, send them in. We love them. This podcast will go until we stop getting questions. Man, I've got a list of people I need to do interviews with that I got from the conference, so there's going to be a bunch of interviews coming up soon. I know we're not the OCD stories, and I'm not trying to be, but man, it's hard to pass up talking to some of these people if I get the chance to. So, all right, everybody, until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Fearcast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com, or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at fearcastpodcast on Instagram. If you like the Fearcast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye.